Hi everyone. Thanks for joining in to the channel. Um, this is Aayush here, and I'll be walking you through on a brief agenda of our topic SAP on Azure Cloud. If possibly, if you encounter any delays or anything, let us know in the chat box and all. We'll have our moderators probably following up on that. So thanks. Just give you a brief introduction. I'm Aayush Johri. Work as enterprise architect, looking and managing SAP cloud technologies and TCS. The idea here is to give you a brief understanding of how the deployments and the transformations customers are running these days. Uh, so I'll move to the next slide, which will briefly talk about the strategies which customers are looking into. Keep pinging me if you uh, think any lag or anything you're not able to hear me. Yeah, so currently as we see, most of the customers are showing a great momentum, towards the cloud, and we see customers adopting to cloud for the various reasons, transformations, major, and of course, as the SAP is uh, licensing, which is somewhere early, it was coming to an end of 2025. Now it has been exceeded somewhere around 2027. So now, of course, we probably will have a little more time to think over and strategize the plan. We see a great feedback from the partners, customers, those who had demand, and people, those who have actually customers who have moved into the cloud and Azure, and they have been able to bring down the return on the overall total cost of ownership. We have seen that 70% of the customers moving to Azure with traditional database, even performing OSDB platform migration to move to Azure, and more customers use Azure as agile and flexible platform to move and deploy. So the screen that you see, it currently depicts the way customers are running their SAP Business Suite applications on premise with any DB, where we're talking about any non-HANA SAP certified SQL uh, databases. The first strategy, there are four types: lift and shift, lift and migrate. Third is lift and migrate to HANA. And the fourth is lift and transform to S4 HANA. So if you look at the first one, this is a lift and shift move to Azure. That's where the customers run their SAP systems on the OSDB combination that they want to keep in Azure as well, because they don't want to change. They simply would like to keep the OS and DB as is. So the main driver to move their existing SAP systems into Azure is the customers, those who are wanting to able to apply right sizing to those systems over time. And the migration becomes simple, homogeneous system copy mainly, because you're not changing any OS or database other than the moving from on-premise to cloud. Now the second, what we're talking about here is a lift and migrate. Some customers need to abandon their OS and even their DBMS platform and move to Azure. And drivers for such a move probably will include not being able to run their, old operating systems, mainframes, and stuff like that. So the customers simply want to move to more cost-effective, and where the customer choice of OS and DB is not supported in Azure. So this becomes more of a heterogeneous system copy where you're changing either OS, DB, or probably you would like to do the both. Yeah. So coming to the third one, that's a lift and migrate. Yeah, we'll definitely take the questions. You
Yeah,
can we
I
can
think you
take
can go
that
and
in the end
can put at the
if
end of
that's
the session.
fine. Yeah.
Can go on, Ayush.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah,
Yeah. Can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you. You can keep moving with the presentation.
You mean in between?
No, no, no. So we take the question at the end. So just keep moving
Yeah,
with the
that's right.
process.
Yeah, yeah. So definitely we'll walk through, we'll go through all the questions in the end and all. Yeah, yeah, definitely we'll take that up. And even if you have any queries, shoot that up. Write to me, and I'll be definitely be able to reply you because the entire session is so short. I'm just trying to cover as much as I can, because I cannot get into too much of depth of the technicalities, and at the same time cannot just go into the theoretical aspects. So it's kind of kept slightly balanced. Yeah. So the third one that I was talking about is lift and migrate to HANA, where if you have to undertake a heterogeneous migration, that means if you're changing OS or probably DB, and you want to consider changing your current DB, probably Oracle to HANA, something like that. So this is from the standpoint of level of efforts. So changing just the OS or changing both OS, DB, MS does not result in significant additional efforts. So that way you can do it both. So this is kind of lift and migrate to HANA, changing OS as well as HANA. Fourth is lift and transform to S4 HANA. So this type includes customers that deploy their new S4 HANA systems on Azure, whereas the customer probably will have ECC running on premise. Already they have been running it, but they want to do the greenfield implementation of S4 HANA on the cloud, and they straight away want to do the new field, greenfield implementation on the cloud. So what they do, they will start straight away from the cloud rather than doing any kind of heterogeneous, homogeneous kind of a thing, and they will probably will have a data migration done. So those are different techniques. We'll come to that. So so this is a brief about the options that one could adopt based on the business requirement. Now moving to the next slide. Here we will briefly talk about the vertical and horizontal, strategies. We have been seeing customers, you know, moving to cloud, but sometimes it gets a little misleading, confusing as to how should we move? Shall we take the entire ECC stack, uh, in one go, or shall we consider just the dev systems of all the landscapes and QA systems and all? How would you decide that? So we see that confusion happening with the customers when we, work with them. So I would say, like, a horizontal migration, just to give you a brief now, where each landscape is moved one environment at a time. So for example, you may move all the development environments in Azure, and then QA, and then pre-production, then production systems. So in general, this method, only makes sense for homogeneous migration. That means you're not doing any change in the OS or DB. Probably things are you keeping the same. So you'll adopt to this probably, horizontal migration, which will be a little more easier. But if you're doing the heterogeneous migration, that means when you're changing the OS or DB, it is more normal to use a vertical approach. So you would rather like to have the entire, you know, ECC be moved first, and then probably SCM system, dev, QA, and production. So you'll just move the entire landscape, because that way you'll be able to come and check the, compatibility between the systems. So it again depends. It's not a hard and fast rule that you will have to choose between the two. You can mix and match. You can mix of horizontal and vertical approaches. And I think sometimes it also depends upon the move groups. Now, when you are talking about move groups, there are closely coupled applications. So let's say if ECC is being moved, it has a close integration with any other application, let's say third party, for example, Seaburger. You'd like to have that move along with that to minimize the impact. So you can do that as well. So you'll have to decide what all move groups you will have to design. Okay, yeah. So this is about it. Now, we talk briefly about the migration, methods which you are adopting. We'll take a deep dive and understand these strategies. Quite crucial. I think that's where we, technical team and end up spending a lot of their time. So there are two methods which we see, homogeneous and the heterogeneous. These are the two things that we've been talking about, but we'll take the methods in a slightly deeper manner and understand. So um, when you talk about the homogeneous, as I said, it is the easiest to execute as the operating system, DB hardware, everything else remains same. Um, so probably, you have few methods like migration using a backup and restore. That's simplest methods of homogeneous migration, I would say. And it is possible to take a full database backup and restore it on the target virtual machine. So, because you're not changing anything, yeah. So the backup and restore method does not provide any opportunity for any data conversion here. And if the source system is non-Unicode, remember that, then the target system will also be non-Unicode. You're not going to change anything over here. So if a conversion is required, because for example, your operating system has to change, probably just think of a case, you have to change the operating system. It is not supported on cloud, for example. Then this either has to be done as another separate step, you know, which probably will be different, slightly done in a different project or something. Yeah. Now coming to the, a homogeneous migration, you probably would need a full copy of a database, or for this backup needs to be taken when the database has been shut down. You'll have to take those things in mind. So ensure you maintain the data consistency. Otherwise, data change after the backup was to, probably will not be copied to the target environment. So these are some of the pointers here. And then you'll have to think of high level process of executing, migration. What are the processes that are coming to the picture? Let me just move to the, so we'll just think through these things. This is just a high level skeleton that I've kept. You probably will, prepare target Azure environments. Now this comprises of taking the subscription storages, the VMs, everything. So there's a huge laundry list that you'll have to go through. I've just put that in a skeleton at a high level. So first is you prepare the target Azure environments. Second is you install database software on the target server. So it could be your whatever, Oracle, MS SQL. Third is you stop the source system. Fourth is you perform the database backup, and then you transfer backup files. Uh, you transfer the backup files from on-premise to Azure. You perform database restore on the cloud, run SWPM, install SAP binaries, and start the SAP system. So there's a high level. It looks simple though, but yeah, when you go dig deeper, it becomes, quite a critical affair. Yeah. So we're talking about the migration using backup and store, and this is very commonly being used in a homogeneous. Now moving to the another, I would say, option you have is a downtime optimized backup and restore. I think this is the fantastic one again being used. This is just the enhancement of the backup and restore. Here, what you're doing, you are just concentrating on the full backup plus incremental, backups which are taken after that. So simple way to reduce downtime window, when using the backup and restore method is to transfer most of the backup files in advance. You are transferring the files in advance so that you should not fall short of time during the cutover period or during the downtime window which you've got. And if you think you've got 500 GBs to transfer, and how would you accomplish that in that cutover period? So a full system backup is taken in advance of the migration period, transferred to Azure, and the backup is restored. And after the full backup, each day an incremental backup is taken, so also transferred to Azure and restored. So here we are using the incremental backup, which will be, quite smaller in size. And during cutover periods, the SAP application is shut down to probably stop any further database changes. You'll have to ensure cutover period will be where you'll be aligned to the downtime period as well. And the final increment backup is taken, and that is transferred to the Azure and restored. So since the file of the incremental backup will be shorter, you'll not end up spending and wasting too much of time and during that downtime. Yeah, so that is the one that you can think of, must think of, because third one that I'm coming to is migration using DBMS replication might be a bit of a tussle, because here you'll have to, have the replication being set up. So, this is sometimes your those methods of backup and restores are not kind of matching your requirements. Then, you can think about this. you'll have to, option of data DBMS replication tool. So probably you'll have to set up the replication for Oracle in advance. So instead of copying all the data during the migration period, you can ship the database files ahead of time and enable the DBMS replication between source and targets. So this way, again, you can do it much better. It will result in a much shorter downtime, but that's again up to you. Now, coming to the next method, which is heterogeneous migration. I would say this is will be again used by many customers because they would like to definitely change their OS or probably databases. Definitely, we are seeing the trend coming to HANA. Then your database gets changed, and of course, if you're changing HANA, then Linux is must to have. So change of operating system choice against become quite mandatory. You cannot stick to probably Windows and stuff like that. So we'll have to change. And this is like a tailored data integration model where you would on the infrastructure as a service on Azure, you'd like to have Linux, HANA running, so that's a combination. Yeah. So whenever there's a change to operating system, DB, hardware platform, so this is sort of export import method, which is more complex than a backup and restore, of course. And that's where a database migration option, comes into the picture. We'll talk about that in much detail later, and I'll tell you the aspects of that. So more recently, we have even seen SAP has enhanced the basic export import solution, with a relatively new option to migrate system to, database migration with system coffee. And it offers kind of a capabilities as classical migration, but in addition, you can perform a system upgrade or Unicode conversion in a single step. So we are not recommending, classical migration anymore when you have a larger kind of a new tool. Some enabled with DMO is now present to take care of these requirements. So DMO has been introduced and it takes care of your system upgrade. It takes care of your Unicode conversion if required. And third is, it takes care of your database migration plus cloud migration. Yeah, you can see that on the slide. I've put it across. I've just moved to that here. So mainly you can do all that in one go, but please ensure that it becomes a critical affair and you may end up having issues while when you're doing all of those things together. Try to spread it across. I think that's a better idea. You will have a visibility across why you're getting the issues. If EHP upgrade is done, customers have done it slightly before when they're planning HANA or Unicode. So one of the customers that we are doing with, they did the Unicode conversion before, and then now they're planning to do the the HANA migration with DMO. So there's a gap. Now it's again of your choice. Yeah. So DMO process is like highly complex, I would say. It is designed for ABAP stack. We'll have to remember that it is not meant to work for Java components. So people probably might be new to DMO. They think it may work for the dual stack. No, it will not. A dual stack has to be split and before the migration, so you'll have to keep that in mind. Only works with ABAP. And especially another point which is important is SAP NetWeaver 7.5 or higher. When we see SAP does not deliver the non-Unicode binaries for 7.5 and stuff. So if your system is non-Unicode and you want to use DMO to upgrade the system to release 7.50 or higher now, which is the latest one, then Unicode conversion is a prerequisite. You'll have to understand and has to be performed in advance. We do not prefer to club it, as I said. So now probably you like to understand if you're using DMO, how will you like to keep a choice of moving from source databases to the target databases? That means from which source database you'll find what target databases are compatible. So I have shared a note. Of course, there will be various such nodes. This is one such node which gives you a idea about the matrix. Let's say Oracle, MS, MaxDB, Microsoft SQL, IBM DB2. If from there you can migrate to SAP, and you can see, you can migrate to almost all the databases. So by default, you can see DMO performs a sort of in-place migration to HANA. In place, what we're trying to mean is if you having the ECC system deployed, you run the DMO on the source system, and this will do the in-place migration. But which means that there's no switch possibility of switching across the application server. That means if you wish to switch across from your data center to the cloud, probably you would like to achieve that. So by default, that thing is not there, but I'll come to that how you can achieve that. But SAP does allow you to use DMO, for data center migration. So when it's executed with the system move option, so while when you go to the DMO, I've not taken any details of the technical things over here because it will become too technical, and probably I'm not sure it's a mix, um, viewers over here, and some might be from a technical, some might be just like to understand from the high level. So I'm just briefly telling you. So when you use DMO with the system move option, remember you'll be able to switch to the cloud migration. You'll be able to do the cloud migration. You'll be able to change the database. You'll do the database migration plus you can do the cloud migration. But that is possible when you use DMO with the system move option. So when using DMO, you will come across a lot of such challenges with system move. There are certain restrictions that we say. Now, only SAP HANA or SAP AC is supported as the target database. Um, if what I'm trying to say here is if you're with system move, you can only move to HANA and AC, and of course, the idea is not to move to any other database. But that's how SAP is restricted. And using DMO with system move, it also allows you to, you might think you will be able to change the SID. That will not be a possibility here. If you're using a system move, it will not allow you to change the system SID. So it will be the same. And how you do that, the process of migrating the system is when you run the DMO on the source system with some, it is a part of the sum. And during the first phase, some execute certain checks and preparation, and one running DMO as a part of a cloud migration with system move option. There are two ways to, transfer the extracted data to the target environment. So it could be a sequential data transfer and a parallel data transfer. So that is slightly about it. Yeah. So I will move to the next. So far I've given you an overview of the approaches where we talked about at the high level how you can migrate and what are the methods you can adopt. Of course, we cannot take a deep dive. I wish I could walk you through that, but so it's not possible over here. Now I'll walk you through a brief, give you an idea on the Azure virtual machines. Now that's again a very critical aspect when you're willing to move to Azure, and I think that's a first choice and think that everyone would look at what is the level and variety of virtual machines which is available in infrastructure as a service, whether you go to AWS, Azure, or GCP. Now, phenomenally, Azure has got a crazy variety of virtual machines which spans across these A. You can see the very first A to M. It also has a large HANA instances. I hope it's visible. It might be a little small. So yeah. So these are the virtual machines, which and there's a wide variety. I'll show you the list of that. I'll come to that. Let me just, it's not happening. Okay. So what I'll say is, if you can just check that note, it has a wide variety of virtual machines which are available. So you will be able to understand what workloads will meet your requirement. But before you arrive to that conclusion, you'll have to do your exercise. You'll have to understand the sizing of your environments. If you're trying to migrate the existing system, you'll have to consider the sizing of what is present with you. But if it's a new implementation altogether, then you'll have to either use the quick sizer tool, SAP sizing guidelines, which are available on the service marketplace. Yeah. So there are two aspects to that. So there are a wide variety of SAP certified Azure VMs, as I said. You can map your requirements, and the full list, you'll find it in this note probably. That is about it. And it is very important. You have to consider which VM meets your requirement. Another important aspect that we see is people do not pay attention to is virtual machine storages. When you are trying to locate the temporary disk storage, the temporary disk storage is kind of a disk attached to the VM that uses a local storage on the physical server. So when you shut down the VM and it is deallocated, and then temporary storage is lost as the next time the VM is started. you know so this is the way you'll have to ensure, besides having the temporary storage, you will have to locate the sufficient other storages, which are available in the form of, four disk types, which are there: Ultra SSD, Premium SSD, Standard SSD, and a standard HDD. So for probably for production system, we use Premium SSD storages. So those are the things that you'll have to work your way through. Then Okay, that's a brief about it. I'll just give you a quick glimpse of the link which I was telling you about. How does it appear? Give me a moment.
So Ayush, yes,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, I'm changing this screen, just showing, yeah. So if you can see, this is the link that I have taken from the deck, and I am just trying to view what all, virtual machines are available from the Azure, ecosystem to me, which are certified for SAP. So here you could see the vendor list. I would select the Azure. It depends if you're doing to any other AWS, GCP, you can select that. But since we're talking about Azure, so I've selected that. And then you can restrict your choices: what CPU, what RAM, number of sockets, operating systems which you like to migrate to, and the list that you arrive is over here. Now you'll have to understand these are different instance types, CPUs and RAM. So based on whatever SAPs you arrive at, you try to map it and get that thing. So this is a brief about it. Okay, so basically the idea here was to cover, the strategies, virtual machine overview, and what is kind of compelling customers to move to Azure. Of course, there is a lot more that we can dig deeper in terms of disaster recovery, but the business continuity planning, which is very important when you think about Azure. You have the high availability zones when you're trying to achieve the high level of SLA, and how you would achieve that. When you have a DR being placed in another region, one of the primary is another region, and you're trying to do the high availability, because that's pretty complex, and some functionalities might be available on certain operating systems, some might not be. So you'll have to have a proper understanding of that before when you start. So that's a basic about it. Thanks, all of you. I think if you have any questions, let me know. Or if you're planning to begin this migration, what are the insights and the challenges that you're getting? Share that. If I may not be able to answer right now, I'll definitely get back to you later. But do share that with me. If you can, I hope you're able to hear me.
So we still have 5 minutes left, 15 minutes left, sorry. So is there anything that you can add? So first, is there anything that you can add?
Come again, please.
We have 15 minutes left. There's still much time left. So you can
Okay,
talk more.
okay, perfect. So we have a pretty good time. Okay, 10 minutes. So let me briefly talk about some of the, sizing aspects, since we have some time left. I thought probably we ran out of time. So when you talk about the CPU and memory, I'll just go dig a bit deeper on the sizing aspects which are involved here. So, when you're trying to do the new SAP deployments, there is probably no difference in sizing for on-premise or in Azure. You'll have to go by the guidelines, as I said, quick sizer or sizing guidelines, and of course the node that I presented with you. So more or less it becomes the same. But when you're migrating an existing workload from on-premise to Azure, now it is recommended to use the reference sizing, which you already have, probably using the capacity and utilization of existing, hardwares, which you've already seen. So you will probably take those considerations, which will cost more, despite the fact that there is no additional benefit sometimes. So probably if you were thinking, if you were currently having a RAM of 128 GB of RAM on premise, and you think about having the same, it would not work like that. Maybe you would kind of overshot your budget. You will overshoot your budget, because virtual machines are quite effective, and with little lesser RAM, I mean, they'll be little more, they'll be quite effective. It's not necessary that you'll have to map. It should be apple to apple copy from on-premise to Azure. So ideally, for replatforming, you will have to think about CPU. when the model of the processor, number of cores, average utilization, and when it comes to memory, how much available memory consumed, and all these parameters. Another thing which is critical is storage sizing. Together with basic compute resources like virtual CPUs and memory, you should have to look at the storage layout. You will find information, I think, more on the Azure sites and the SAP notes there, what all storage types are available. Another thing is application servers. When you're trying to size the application servers as well as the database servers. So probably SAP application servers do not require high performance disk storage, as they do not, require a large number of IOPS or high throughput. And so maybe therefore, assigning a disk that supports a larger number of IOPS or higher throughput is sort of unnecessary. So think about there, you can save your cost, and probably our application servers with premium SSD managed disk will benefit from the higher one. So the 99%, the SLA that we have is 99.9% for a single VM is only valid, when the VM uses a premium managed disk. So if the SLAs are governed, while when you have a single VM, or probably you are an availability set, or you are an availability zone. So availability zone, of course, give you the higher SLA. May not be able to take that over here. Another important thing is database servers. Now, when you're trying to size the database server, database performance is usually highly dependent on the underlying storage. For new workloads on Azure, the number of IOPS and the throughput should come from sizing estimates, I would say. And the storage performance requirements can be obtained either from underlying storage platform that you have, whether it has performance monitoring tools available, or from the database itself, I would say. And to achieve the higher performance, multiple disks can be obtained into a logical volume. So that way you'll have to span out. I think it is a lot of a bit of a math which we'll have to work out, can understand. Now coming to the another aspect is you have network sizing that you'll have to consider. What is the throughput and the latency? Which region you are in. There is something called proximity placement groups, PPG, which Azure has, which limit the number of network hops, during the communication. So that's about it. I think you take care of the network sizing as well, understanding how the overall network is like. Then another critical aspect is your central services instances, ACS, ERS, and how you're going to place them. What is the level of clustering which is required? How do you cluster? So if you're using a Linux operating system, you have the native clustering capability which is available called as a pacemaker. To make use of it, it's come as free from Linux, and most of the customers are definitely utilizing that. It's a pacemaker which is for Linux. So that will take care of your operating system level, this application level of clustering. So that's brief about the sizing we covered and the other tools. I think we are good for now, and we can
Okay.
close the session with the with the
Wait.
questions. Yeah.
Yes, we have some question from the audience. The question was, can we run the cloud platform on Azure?
Come again. I couldn't.
The question was, can we run the cloud platform on Azure?
Cloud platform. See, which cloud platform is it? SAP has its own cloud platform. If you're trying to say, uh, c- uh, uh, Azure is when you might say it as a cloud. It's again a data center. It's in the cloud. So I would like to still understand who has asked this question. Can you run cloud platform on Azure? What exactly does that mean? Are you trying to put what does that mean? You have a platform. Let's say, for example, you take a example. You are doing a platform as a service, and you're trying to use the capability of Azure Cloud, where you have development capabilities available, and you just go and develop the code and start utilizing it. You have a software as a service model available from Azure, like how we use the Outlook and all. So that's the way to that. Yeah. Any other questions?
So if you have any questions, you can type them away on the chat. So I think we can wait 30 seconds because there's some delay.
Yeah. So if you
If there's
have
some questions.
if our viewers have any questions, please let us know. write to us any doubts in detail, and we can always get back, and we'll reply to you over here if you are listening to us.
You can type them in the chat if you have any questions.
Yeah, sure. Let me just put that.
I think that's all. Now there's no further question. So we can close the session with announcement. So the winner for this session,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
Rakesh Muria. Congratulations to Rakesh Muria. You won the SAP reactivation code, and you can fill the form on the live chat so we can contact you any further. So thank you all for
Thank
participating.
you. Thank you.
Bye.